Greetings, this is Vijwali with you. For the next few minutes, I want to talk about you. Just think about your life. Think about yourself, how you exist now, and how you would really like to live. Listen carefully to what I am saying, and you will realize that it is within your power to build your personal economy. I came to this realization many years ago when a man said to me, "Boy, if you read this book and follow my advice, you can achieve anything you want." I didn't believe it, but he did believe, and he was happy, healthy, and prosperous. And I was miserable, sick, and without money. I didn't have the proper education or business experience. So he said, "Boy, your past is behind you. The future depends on your decisions." He knew how to make money, how to be joyful and stay healthy. "If you follow my recommendations, your life will change," he assured me. And guess what? It did change. Within a year, my income multiplied. The change was so dramatic that I made a decision. I will always have a mentor. I'm going to be an apprentice. I will look for people who have already achieved what I am striving for, and I will follow their example. That's what I've been doing for over 50 years. Once upon a time I wrote, "I will have a company operating all over the world." Today, people watch me from every corner of the planet, and I'm going to show you how to start the processes that will lead you to growth. Growth is a natural part of life. If something doesn't grow, it fades away, which means if we want to move forward, we have to change. You can't live in the same old way and expect new results. It's impossible. That man said to me, "Boy, change your thinking and you will change your life." I had never thought about that before. I thought worldview was the domain of philosophers. But he asked me a simple question. "Do you want more money?" Of course I did. I was convinced that money would solve all problems. I barely had any, but I had a lot of debt. I didn't make much money, but the bills kept coming. You pay one and another one comes in. Then he said, "There are a few things you need to understand if you want to get rich. They're not complicated, and anyone can master them. You need to know where you are now, determine where you're aiming, and move in that direction." It's so obvious that one wonders why most people are treading water. Look around you. Many have virtually the same results as they did a year ago. There may be some changes, but they are minor. Given the potential that is inherent in us, our achievements can be multiplied many times over. We are the highest form of creation. Our mental capacity is staggering. But you know what the problem is? People often have no purpose. Although they may have goals, they dream, but they don't know how to turn their desires into reality. However, even that is not the main problem. The main difficulty is realizing where you are right now. Most people don't realize this. Yes, they know where they are physically, standing on a farm, walking down Fifth Avenue in New York City. But here is where they are mentally. They don't realize. They can't explain why they get the same results over and over again. It's a vicious circle. Then my mentor said, "I will explain to you what is the matter. It all depends on your thinking." He further added, "Boy, you must learn to control your thought stream. Let that energy flow freely through you, and it will improve everything it comes in contact with." Energy flows in and through us. It can even be captured in a photograph. You may have heard of a technique called Kirlian photography. In 1934, Soviet researcher Semyon Davidovich Kirlian developed a technology that allows you to capture the energy emanating from any object. Everything around us is a flow of energy. Did you know that the potential energy contained in the electrons of our body's atoms is approximately 11 million kilowatt hours per pound? We are literally walking power plants. All we have to do is learn how to channel that power properly. Let's understand what life attitudes are. It is a kind of psychological program that almost completely controls our habitual behavior. Just think about it for a minute. Almost all of our behaviors are determined by habits. It is attitudes that shape our lives. Here's the main point I want to make. We actually have almost no control over our lives. People go to school, get an education, learn a lot of useful information. Some even get a degree and proudly display it on their business card. They certainly have intelligence, knowledge too. But here's the question. Why don't they use it? Why do so many university graduates find themselves in a situation where they are still paying off their tuition debts and yet can't find a decent job? How is this possible? How can a person who knows so much remain penniless? The answer is simple. It's all about life attitudes. This is a very interesting topic. There is no ambiguity here. Everything is very clear. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how many hours you spend at work. I have been studying this issue for over 50 years, and I am very familiar with it. Unless your internal mindset changes, your results will remain about the same as they were a year ago. This is exactly what happens for most people. If you only remember one thing from everything I'm saying, let it stick in your mind. As long as your life attitudes control you, nothing will change. You can try endlessly to improve one area of your life or another, but if your attitude remains unchanged, any effort will be in vain. So, what to do? How can we take control of this process? The answer is simple. We have the power of choice. We have an amazing mental capacity. What does it mean to change a mental attitude? It is an amazing observation. As soon as we manage to change the inner program, everything starts to take shape in a new way. Years ago, I wondered, what do rich people do differently? What makes them different? There are very intelligent and educated people among them, and in their case it is easy to understand why they are rich. But I came across others who were not geniuses at all, and they were still wealthy. They were men and women, young and old, from different nationalities and cultures. But there were rich and poor alike. So, what do they have in common? What does almost everyone who has achieved financial prosperity have in common? I say almost because I can't guarantee this is true for 100% of people, but it probably is. The answer: they have multiple sources of income. Almost no wealthy person has only one financial stream. How many of these sources do they have? Personally, I have them all over the world because my company operates internationally. I've talked about this before. You can have passive sources of income too. You can make money even in your sleep. That's exactly how it works. Tonight I got income tonight. Tomorrow night too. And you can do the same. The key is to change your attitudes. There are only two ways to do it. Yes, there are only two. Our worldview is like a program in our minds that dictates our behavior. No matter how much information we receive, as long as our attitudes remain the same, they continue to drive our actions. So, the first way: constant repetition of new ideas that are contrary to your current beliefs. This is how new thinking is formed. Your life attitude is your worldview. The second way is less common. It is the experience of a strong emotional shock that literally shakes up your consciousness and makes you look at the world differently. That's it. That's how life changes. Here's an example. Think back to September 11th in New York. The Twin Towers were destroyed. It was a colossal emotional shock. Perhaps not for me or for you personally, but for those who were there at that moment, for the families of the victims, their attitudes changed in an instant. One moment, and their lives would never be the same again. Fortunately, such events are rare. That's why we are left to rely on the first way to change attitudes: constant repetition. Why is this so important? For example, you may have taken a seminar on how to change your mindset, then you signed up for another one, and then another. I myself started reading a book 57 years ago, and I'm still reading it. Here it is on my desk, open to 2 pages that I've been rereading for 3 months now. Because I know this, life attitudes only change through repetition. Let me explain why this works. Imagine the white line is my voice, and the red line is how you listen to it. You are sitting there listening, but listening and hearing are not the same thing. You can listen to me, but you can't hear me. Parents notice this a lot in children. The same thing happens in marriage. Spouses listen to each other, but they don't hear each other. And there you have the source of a lot of conflict. When I say something, your brain is processing the information, but suddenly some thought distracts you, and you drop out for a few seconds. The white line keeps going, I'm talking, but the red line, your attention, drifts away. Then you come back, you listen again, and then you get distracted again. That's why you can listen to the same thing many times and suddenly say, "Oh, that's new, I didn't notice that before." Or reread a book and think, "That's odd, I don't remember that being here." It's just that last time you physically read it, but mentally you were somewhere else. If we were to mark on a graph all the times you were distracted, we'd see dots. And here's the interesting thing. If you re-listen to the same material later, the likelihood that you'll get distracted in the same places is virtually nil. You will lose your attention again, but at other points. So, through repetition, your life gradually begins to change. I didn't know this myself until I started reading a book and listening to Earl Nightingale's recordings. That was in 1961, and I was so struck by his message that I couldn't stop listening. 10 years later, I was living in England, making over $1 million a year, owning businesses in 7 cities, in Canada, the US, and the UK. And I asked myself the question, how did this happen? I had been taught from childhood that to make good money, you had to be smart. But I wasn't particularly smart. I was taught that you can't get a job without a good education. And I didn't just have a job, I owned a company. Turns out a lot of my old beliefs were wrong. It took me almost 10 years to realize that. When I finally realized how it worked, I had only one desire: to tell others about it. The secret turned out to be simple: repetition. I listened to the same thing over and over again, first on records, then on cassettes, then on the internet. It works in all areas of life. That's why people living on welfare often come from families where it's the third, fourth, fifth generation on public assistance. They simply don't know any other life. They are programmed by those around them from childhood. In the same way, we learn our mother tongue. Imagine if you were only told your name once in your life. You wouldn't remember it, but your parents repeated it over and over again, and now you automatically know it's your name. That's how it works. I'm almost 78 years old, and I have the energy of a 34-year-old. Age doesn't matter. Here's a question for you. How old would you be if you forgot how old you really are? Intelligence has nothing to do with it. There are plenty of smart people who don't succeed. That's not what's important. What's important is your worldview, your attitudes. And if you realize the power of repetition, your life will begin to change. Believe me, it's worth it.